Hey guys, it's Coop from Garage Gym Reviews, and today I'm reviewing the Assaultbike Pro X. This is a first for Assaultbike. I've been asking them to do this. Man, it's gotta be about 10 years that I've been talking about this. Ever since the first belt drive bike came out, they were the ones who I would say brought the air bike into the modern era. They took the old Schwinn 84 that had been around and beefed it up, made it black, put better components on it, and marketed it really well. And it was in every CrossFit gym in the world. It had a chain drive. It worked really well, but still had the maintenance issues of chain drives. Up until this point, they have not come out with a belt drive. It's like they've just stuck to their guns. We're not changing it until now. And they added the X. This is the Assaultbike Pro X, and it's their first belt drive. It basically sits in the middle of their lineup where they have the Assaultbike Classic, which is the one that pretty much everybody knows and loves, and then what I think is the overpriced Assaultbike Elite on the high end. And then this one, and this fits in the middle. It is designed, everything about it, price point, everything is designed to go after the most popular air bike today, and that is the Rogue Echo bike. But does it beat it? Is it better? Is it worth the difference in price and everything? Let's find out. Okay, so before I get into the review, just for transparency's sake, Assaultbike sent this free of charge for a review. I've actually been able to test it for a little bit before release, so I can give my actual opinion after using it. In addition to that, if you'd like to purchase it, you can check the link below the like button. That'll go to their site. If you purchase it there, they'll give us a small commission, but it doesn't increase the cost you pay. Okay, this is Assaultbike's first belt drive. And the reason that's significant is because I personally love belt drives. I've talked about them ever since I think the real first one came out, which was the Schwinn 87, the Schwinn Airdyne Pro. That was really the first belt drive that hit the market. And then it seemed like every new air bike that came out used a belt drive, except for Assault. Assault, they came out with their bikes and were like, we're just gonna do chain drive, we're gonna stick to it. It made sense because they don't have to have a bunch of different mechanisms on the inside to maintain and have parts for and deal with, everything like that. And there are some benefits to chain drive, like I'm not gonna lie, there are some benefits to a chain drive versus a belt drive. But generally, I think a belt drive is a much better decision. So what it seems like Assault has done is they took their Assaultbike Pro, which we've reviewed and was a chain drive, and it was kind of just a better version of their Classic, but still had a chain drive. They took that frame and everything about it, and they replaced the internals, the chain drive, with a belt drive, and then added an X on the end of the logo. I mean, that's basically what we have here. So I'm gonna walk through it, tell you what I think about it, and also compare it to others that are out there. So this one, in using the belt drive, I think is a vastly better machine than what the Pro was. Even though this is kind of like a Pro 2.0 with better internals, I think the belt drive is just so much better. One, it's quieter. Like on this bike is really quiet. In fact, some of the people on our team were over here just looking at it, playing around with it, and they were all remarking how quiet it was. Of air bikes, this one is very quiet. The noise that happens comes from the fan blades, but one thing that's unique about Assault is they're still using essentially the bicycle spoke with fan blades added in versus the big, heavy, welded fan blades you see on like the Rogue Echo bike. This has two benefits. One is it's a little bit easier to move and get started, and then two, it also doesn't make as much noise because it's not resisting as much wind. So this is a very quiet air bike. And part of that is due to the belt drive. The belt drive is also gonna be low maintenance, practically maintenance free. Like of all the air bikes that I have that have belt drives, I've never done anything with the belt drives. They just work. Chains, you do have to lube them, you have to tension them. There's just more things you have to worry about. Whereas belts, there's a reason they use them on cars. Also, durability wise, I mean, chain is metal, so I mean, metal is very durable, but these rubber belts, like you're gonna have to spend so much time using them for them to wear out at all, and the replacement I think will be pretty easy. So I really like the belt drive. The frame on this is just like the previous gen Assaultbike Pro. It's a very beefy frame. This is a very heavy bike. In fact, one of the heaviest on the market. Really, there's only two bikes that I can think of that are heavier. One is the Elite from Assaultbike, which is a very heavy bike. The other one is the Vulcan Thrasher bike, which we've recently reviewed. This bike is actually 2 pounds heavier than the Rogue Echo bike. This is 125 pounds. The Echo bike is 123 pounds. That translates into a very stable bike. So when you get on this and you're wanting to just go all out, you're doing HIIT or various interval training, you want a bike that's not moving around. This one doesn't move around. It's very solid. The original Assault Bike Classics, they move around a little bit because they're a little bit lighter. They also don't have as wide of a base, so they do move. But people still don't have problems using those in CrossFit gyms where you have, really high capacity athletes. Like if you're in a garage gym training, this thing is gonna be very stable. Now it's a negative sometimes with moving it around, but I find that most people, wherever they put their air bike, unless they're in a garage in the summer and they're moving it outside to use it, most people, where it is, that's where it's gonna live. And so I like the extra weight. Pretty much every component on this is metal. Really the only non-metal components are, say, the monitor and also the shrouds that are wrapping the internals. Pretty much everything else that you're gonna be interacting with is gonna be metal, or it's gonna have some sort of rubber over it, like the grips. That includes the linkage, that includes the cranks, that includes the pedals, that includes the shroud. It's all pretty much gonna be metal, which means that it should last a long time. It's gonna be a very durable bike, and also means when you press on the arm, because the linkage is stiff, it's gonna be direct. So when you put into this, when you put power into this, there's not gonna be a lot of play. Something I really like about that, and something that's a little annoying about some of the cheaper air bikes, is when you press on the handles, there's just like some play there. This one is pretty direct. As soon as you start pressing and going, it moves the fan as well. Now, similar to the Assault Bike Classic, this has a lot of adjustments, both up and down and forward and back on the seats. That really matters. A lot of the original Airdynes, that wasn't a possibility, but a lot of different size people are using this, and they're also using these in commercial gyms or CrossFit gyms. Because of that, you have all these different body types. It's really nice to be able to dial in the distance that you're using it on. So, like most modern air bikes, it has travel all throughout. The seat is very cushioned, by the way. If you just aren't used to sitting on a saddle, like using a road bike, and you just want something that's cushioned, this one's gonna meet your desires on that. One thing that we started to do is talk about the Quack factor or the Q factor on these air bikes. The Quack factor is something that is really measured on all road bikes and also mountain bikes. And the Quack factor is basically the distance between the crank arms. The reason that matters, especially on these air bikes, is because there's a lot of things in between, so they can get really wide. And so the reason they call it the Quack factor is because you kind of look like a duck if it's really wide out when you're pedaling. And you may notice this on some bikes that are more wide. When you're pedaling, your heel can start hitting because it's just an unnatural, you're having to keep your legs out. So the Q factor on this is 8¼ inches. Just for comparison, the Q factor on the Concept 2 Bike Erg is 5 1/8 inch. So it's one of the better ones, one of the thinnest ones that's out there, and really does feel more like a road bike. But then if I'm comparing this to other air bikes that are out there with arms, the ones that's on the lower end, the Schwinn 87, the 80 Pro, it's 7 1/8 inch. And then on the higher end, we've got ones like the Vulcan Thrasher that are near 10 inches. So they're really wide. If you've ever used the Rogue Echo bike though, this one is very similar to that. They're pretty much the same measurement. So if you're fine on the Echo bike, you'll be fine on this one in terms of the Q factor. Now for Assault Bike, they're using the same monitor on all their devices. It's actually one of my favorite monitors on air bikes. Again, I think they could be better. I've talked about this ad nauseum. I would love to see PM5s, performance monitors from Concept 2 on these, where you could have leaderboards and track more things. I just really like those. Rogue's new Echo bike version 3 has a better display that's improved, but I actually really like this one because it's got physical buttons. They're easy to touch. You know when you've touched them. It's a high vis display. It has colors on the buttons, and I'm kind of an idiot, so having colors is really nice to see what I'm touching. And also, it just displays all of the components you'd want, from heart rate, connects to monitors. Also, you can easily do intervals. You've got calories and distance, everything that you would want. And this is kind of what's been used as a standard for a long time amongst people that are using air bikes a lot, like CrossFitters. Now, really, let's talk about the value. How does this compare against all the others? Because that's really what matters, is you have so many options today on air bikes. There are so many air bikes you can go with, and you've got a lot of proven ones. Why would you buy this one that's more expensive than the Assault Bike Classic? Well, I would actually recommend this as Assault Bike's best air bike. I think this is their best one. I think this is their magnum opus. If I'm gonna buy an Assault Bike, this is gonna be it. Because the higher end is the Elite, And I think the Elite is just not that great. It's chain drive, it's very heavy, it looks more commercially oriented, but I don't think the components really even lend it to that. It doesn't have a better experience. That bike I'm not a huge fan on. On the lower end, you have the Assaultbike Classic, which is a cheaper bike and really well made, but the difference is it's also a chain drive. So I like a belt drive. I think this is their best one that they make. But then you look outside of the silo and you're like, oh, there's all these bikes. What should I get? The most popular one right now is the Rogue Echo Bike, and this one competes, I think, really well with the Echo Bike. Reason being, Echo Bike is $845 with free shipping. This one, it's $800 with free shipping. They also are very similar in weight. They also both use belt drives. There's just a lot about them that I think are similar. But if I'm looking at one or the other, like, it's kind of a toss-up. Like, they're both really good bikes, both from proven companies that have been selling a lot of air bikes, both using belt drive. There's just a lot of similarities between them, and I think they did that on purpose because the Echo Bike is really the one that many people are chasing today. So I really like this. And if you're just looking to save a little bit of cash, 45 bucks, like, I'd rather have 45 bucks in my pocket than $0. So because of that, I think this is a really good option. Like, I really do. I do wish it had extra handles. It's one reason I love the Schwinn 80 Pro. Another thing though about this that I think some people will like more than the Echo Bike is it's a little bit easier. Like, it just is. Like, one thing about the Echo Bike, because those fan blades are so big, like, it's just a little bit hard to get started. This one, it's not as easy as the chain drive Classic, which, like, those things just seem to, that's why people like them a lot. They're just easy to get started. This one's very easy to get started though. So if you're looking for something, say, for the elderly, or just want something that has a little bit easier on the low end, like, I think this is a good option. There are so many bikes out there though. We should really do a new roundup on the best air bikes. If you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments. But I do think this is a really good value. 800 bucks from Assault. I think it competes directly with Echo. If you're looking at this or the Echo, like, it's a toss-up, you can decide. But I think it's Assault's best bike to date. I really do. It also includes, as part of it, a little water bottle holder on the front. One thing though, I just want to mention this because I do think this matters, even though it's small. If you're wanting an air bike and you're looking at the Echo Bike and you're like, man, look at all the attachments I can add to them, this one does not have as many attachments available as the Echo Bike. And the one that I think matters the most is the wind guard. This does not have a wind guard that comes standard or that you can even buy extra. They have one for their Classic, but that only fits the Classic. So, Assault, please come out with either an optional wind guard or it's just a cheap piece of plastic. Just include it with it. People are training in their garage gyms in the cold, and using an air bike absolutely sucks to use in the winter. So many of you, if you buy this, you're gonna come up with your own DIY solution. I know, because I see it all the time, but I think Assault, you should definitely come out with a plastic guard for it. Okay, that's my review. I think it's really good. I think it's their best option. I don't think it's the best air bike ever. I think it has a good price point, good value, but there are many others that I reviewed that you should look at and compare it to. Okay, this has been Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. I'll see you next time. Peace.